Hello and welcome to Off the Fence, a podcast where we deconstruct difficult decision making to help us find out what keeps us stuck, and more importantly, how do we get unstuck? I'm your host, Karen Covey, a former divorce lawyer, mediator, and arbitrator turned coach, author, and entrepreneur. With me today is Linda Kooper. Linda Kooper is an online business manager and executive virtual assistant who works with established small businesses and entrepreneurs. She helps them grow their businesses by allowing them time to work on revenue-generating tasks while she manages their administrative tasks. As a former software developer, Linda knows how to pay excellent attention to detail, and she has amazing strategic ability. And in the interest of full disclosure, I should probably say she is my virtual assistant, executive assistant. And so I know just how good she is. So Linda specializes in newsletters, expense and invoice tracking, as well as email and calendar management. Linda, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Karen. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, and thank you for letting me twist your arm into doing this. I think this is going to be an important conversation for people on a lot of levels, but I want to start with your career, right? I know we've got a lot of different directions that we can go here today, but let's start with your career as a software developer. I'm curious, how did you go from software developer to owning your own business as an executive virtual assistant and online business manager?
Okay, well, it wasn't a straight path. I was a developer and then I decided to have children. So I became semi-retired or pretty much retired when I had my first child. And for about 12 years, I was retired. And then once my youngest got into middle school, before that I was the room mom, I was the sports mom, I was teaching religious ed, I was totally involved in their lives. I did art in the classroom. Just did whatever I could to be fun with them. And then they didn't need me as much. So I thought, well, I can maybe, get a part-time job. And I think I applied on a Wednesday and I was hired on a Monday. And I thought this was going to take like weeks or months. I'm like, what do you mean you want me to start Monday? So I started and it was a virtual assistant agency. I worked for a company for about 10 years. And after about 10 years, it was just after COVID, the business went in a different direction. So I decided to go ahead and do this on my own. And I started my own company. And that was 2021. And I love it. It's so much fun. I love it.
Well, what prompted you to make that decision? Because I know that a lot of people, that's the place where they get stuck, right? You had a job, it was paying the bills, it was working, at least on some level, but you decided to leave that job, to change and to open your own business, which is a huge leap of faith, right? How did you make that leap of faith? What prompted you to make that decision? And what process did you use to say, yeah, that's what I want to do, not this?
Well, I knew at that point that I was unemployable by corporate. I was in corporate, for, 10, 15 years before I had kids. And I knew there was no way I could go back. I couldn't stick to the schedule and the tape and I couldn't go back. So I thought, I want my freedom. I want to be able to work from home. I still want to be able to take vacations with my kids before they outgrow me. So I wanted the flexibility and I thought I might as well try this. So I did. And when I left, a couple of my clients wanted to come with me. So that was a great way to start. My former employer was great with that. She's like, I can't handle you without her. So go ahead. So it was great.
That's awesome. And then that was 2021, you said?
Yes. Yeah.
And tell me about your journey since then, because your business has just continued to grow and blossom, which I'm not surprised at. I mean, I have to tell you, I'm a little bit nervous that people are going to watch this podcast and now everyone's going to try to steal you. You just have to promise me that there's still going to be a place for me in your life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're so funny.
Well, yeah. So how did you grow your business? What steps did you take? What did you decide to do that moved you from, a part-time gig to where you are now?
I did a lot of networking, and I tried to break out into new groups. So I did find a couple of new groups that brought me a few clients, and I hired a business coach. So that was kind of huge. She taught me how to structure the business better, how to talk to people without selling. Because really, I'm not about the sale. I'd rather build relationships. And I have let go of clients before because they just weren't my cup of tea. So, it's more about the relationship and not the money. So she taught me how to approach a business that way. And after working with a business coach, it just kind of took off from there. So, and it's still growing.
Yeah. So big plug for coaches.
Yeah.
But speaking of coaches, I also happen to know, because I work with you, that on top of going through all of this and building the business and doing all of that, you also at the same time managed to go through a divorce. So would you mind sharing with the audience a little bit about your experience of divorce and how that went?
Oh, well, that started in 2012, is when it first started. It was horrible. It was really horrible. I didn't know what I was doing. Who does? No one expects to get a divorce. I didn't plan for it. I had thought about it a few years prior, and then the day after my birthday in 2012, I was like, I can't do this. We were fighting, we were miserable, the kids weren't happy. I was just like, before I get really old, I need to get out. So we started the process, and it took from 2012 to 2014 to complete.
Wow.
So
Now, let me back you up a little bit, back to the 2012. Did you do any planning or preparation for your divorce, or one day it was just, I'm done?
So it was pretty much one day, I'm done. I did do a little bit of planning. At the time, I didn't know there was such a thing as divorce coaches. I mean, were you guys around in 2012? Because I didn't know of any. I wish I had. It would have been so much easier. There was a group in Evanston that I attended, and I got a little bit of support from that, and I got a little bit of direction, but not as much as I think I would have gotten if I had an actual coach. That was really my only support. I'm born and raised Catholic. None of my friends were divorced.
Ooh.
So that wasn't a place I could really turn. I have two older people in my life that are like second moms to me, and they were both divorced. So they were my source of support, and they were amazing. But yeah, I didn't have a coach. I wish I did.
Yeah. So that just, I mean, it kind of goes to show, and what I want the audience to really pick up on is that you just dove in head first, and the process took a long time. And I know, because I know you, although I didn't know you at the time, or life would have been different. But I didn't know you at the time, but you just dove in and did stuff and hoped for the best. And it took a long time, and probably could have been a much easier path had you done things differently, had you known that there was such a thing as a divorce coach. But I want to stop and pull you back then during that process. Because this podcast focuses on decision making, how many decisions did you have to make as you were going through your divorce?
Oh my goodness. I can't even count. It seems like they were never ending. We promised to keep the kids in the same school district. So ultimately that fell to me. So I had to find a new place to live. I had to find a lawyer. So many decisions. At the same time, oh my gosh, probably 4 months after the divorce, he actually wound up filing. After he filed, my mom passed away. So then in this whole thing, I also had to deal with her estate. I was the executor of her estate. So I was a hot mess. So I can't count the number of decisions. I guess the way I dealt with them is prayer, faith, and Google. That was it. I adopted a saying for myself: everything always works out for me. Only goodness and grace come my way. And I just kept repeating it over and over and over. And then I would research things on Google, pray it was the right decision, and have faith it would work out. And I would kind of just figure out a decision and stick with it.
Wow. Now, a lot of the decisions that you made, that you described, a lot of those were non-legal decisions, but there's also the legal ones, like, what do you want to settle for, X or Y? Do you want to have the kids on this day or that day? Or, all those steps that you have to go through when you're going through a divorce. Did your lawyer help you make those decisions?
No, unfortunately, they were not a lot of help. Like, I really was hoping for more guidance, and I researched the lawyer. The lawyer had a really great review, and then met with her. She was great. And then she passed me off to like a junior attorney, I think. And her and the paralegal made mistake after mistake. And it was crazy. Like, they couldn't even spell my name right. I mean,
Oh,
I know
that's not good.
it's spelled with a K. They always spelled it with a C. I would put like I always tried to make the decisions based on what was best for the kids. So, I thought we would be in the same town. I didn't want them to move around a lot. So I kind of made the decisions based on the kids and what would work best for them and disrupt their lives the least. So that was my guiding point.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like, guidance from Google. Not necessarily your best source, but I get it, because you're a resourceful person and you were trying to find some kind of guidance, some kind of answer. I'm curious though, when it would come, because there are certain turning points or important points in the life of a divorce case. I know it because I'm a lawyer, and it's like, here's your guideposts, right? These things are going to happen. How much notice did you get that you were going to have to make these decisions about kids or money or settlement or whatever before the fact?
Before I hired a lawyer, or before?
No, before, as you're going through the case, so you've got
Okay.
the lawyer, and like, would the lawyer give you advance notice, like, hey, there's a pretrial coming up on this date. Here's the things you're going to have to think about. Here's the things you're going to have to decide. Or there's a mediation coming up, and here's the things you're going to have to think about. And let's form a strategy of what is going on. Tell me about that.
No. From what I can remember, I went into her office and she sent me home with a packet of questions. And I can't remember if I went back to her with the questions and we discussed them, or if I emailed them, but yeah, there was no guidance. There was no, I never knew it was coming up, like, I knew the dates were coming up, but I didn't know what they were for. Like, I didn't realize the first one was just for like a hearing or a date to set the trial date. You know what I mean? There are so many dates before the actual date. And I would show up and we'd be done in 5 minutes. I'm like, what was that? So I had no idea what to expect. There was no guidance. The information I would give, I think it would be helpful to have someone coach you along the way to tell you why you're giving that information. Because I would just give them, like, I of course had spreadsheets, everything was organized, and I would just give them the information, not always in my organized fashion. And then they would try to reorganize it and give it back to me. There'd be mistakes. I could have just given them everything that I had in an organized fashion to begin with, save time and money, but I didn't know. I'm like, oh, here's all this paperwork. They asked for bank statements, and I didn't know they were taking the numbers off the bank statements, putting them into spreadsheets. I already had all that done. Do you know what I mean? So if I had been coached and said, they're going to ask you for all this information, provide it in a nice, clean format, it'll save you $400 in 3 hours, or whatever, $1,200 in 3 hours worth of work, whatever it is. But I wasted a lot of money because of that. So
yeah, I was going to say $400 is not 3 hours of a lawyer's time. Gotta tell you, even back then, right?
Right.
But it sounds like, because you didn't have any experience in the process and you didn't know what was coming, you spent money you didn't have to spend.
Absolutely. For instance, to begin with, well, first we started with a mediator. So I thought this would be great. Let's go to a mediator. There's really nothing to fight about.
Let me interrupt you for a second. So you started with a mediator before you even got a lawyer?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Keep going. Tell me what happened.
I thought, well, this will be easier and less expensive, and we won't blow the college fund for our kids, right? We got into the mediator's office, and she started laying it out. She said, this is the percentage you're going to have to pay for child support. He got mad, got up and walked out, and that was the end of it. And he's like, I'm getting a lawyer. And I was like, it's not going to change. This is the law.
Yeah.
So that was really frustrating. I wish there was a way that I knew I could prepare him for the mediator before we got there, so he could accept. Do you know what I mean? Like, if I could prepare for mediation, it would have been so much better. But then we got to the lawyer. I forgot the question.
No worries. It was like, you started, just what happened? What was your journey with mediation? And it sounds like it did not go well.
No, it's like a 15-minute meeting, but I know I was going to tell you. So we both went to our lawyers and said, I want to file. And we both drew up papers for filing for divorce. So I spent an extra $1,000 and then he filed before I did. So we didn't even know we were both doing that. So I suggest find a way to somehow communicate, even if it's through email, so you know what you're doing, So yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. And it points out something. I mean, people don't understand how the court system works. And lawyers are just going to do what they're going to do, and duplicating effort, unfortunately, happens all the time. Right. And so, yeah, what you're saying, it was like, okay, how to waste money in divorce 101.
Right. Oh, I could write a book. Yes.
So you're off to the races. Did you ever try to mediate again?
We got sent to mediation once for parenting because there were just some time issues. That was it. So that was a mandated one-time thing. That was it.
And again, how much preparation did you have before you went into that?
None. I feel like I really had no guidance. Like I felt like I had to kind of rely on Google. I don't know if my lawyers were overworked or because it was a junior attorney handling my case for 90% of the time. I don't know. I feel like they dropped the ball a lot on my case. Like they would miss things that I would ask for, and then they would give it back. They'd send the document back to me and big chunks of information would be missing. And yeah, I did not get a lot of guidance. Like I never knew what to expect.
So you're going through this process, and like when you started, I understand that you and your husband obviously weren't communicating because you both did double work. But from that point on, were you able to talk? Were you able to be amicable? Was it a big fight? Tell me about the experience you had.
No, and there was nothing amicable about it. We were still in the same house for about 6 to 9 months. Definitely we avoided each other at all costs. I moved into the guest bedroom. I had to put a lock on my door because I would come in and my stuff would be moved around. I was like, what is going on? Yeah, we would try to email. Eventually I caught on because we were splitting the stuff in the house, and my lawyer would say, what do you want? And I would send it to her, and then she'd send it to his lawyer, and then his lawyer would send it to him. And each time it's another $80 for an email. And it was like, wait a minute, we can send this to each other. We don't have to go through the lawyers. So eventually we caught on to that, but that was all through email. There was no talking. There's no talking for like months.
Wow. Did you use any of the parenting app software like Our Family Wizard or Co-Parently or anything like that?
We started with App Close. I don't know what that one is, but that one allowed a lot of swearing and vulgar language. So I went back to the court to say, can we have a different one? Of course, everything had to be court mandated because there was a lot of reluctance. Yeah, so we did have to use a parenting app, which was helpful because it allowed me to track, when I submitted expenses and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, parenting apps, I mean, they've been around for a very long time, but they keep getting better and better and better. And what is important for the audience to hear is if you are in the situation where you're divorcing, you've got parenting issues, the parenting app can be a lifesaver, especially, for example, Our Family Wizard has what they call a tonometer. So if you have that vulgar language, if you have the whatever, literally like red flags go up before you hit send, and the app says, are you sure you really want to send this? This could be aggressive, and then so you have an opportunity to change how you're wording something. But then once the email goes out, you can't change a thing from that point forward. So that if you do write stupid things in an email, like not only will your spouse see it, but the lawyers can see it, the judge can see it, and everybody can see it. And you can't say, no, I never did that, because you did.
Right, exactly.
So, all right. So your case goes along. It takes 2 years. What happens at the end of 2 years? Did you go to trial?
No. Well, when for the divorce, no, we had everything in writing. We agreed on everything for the divorce. So the decree, we just went to the judge and we presented it, and she signed off and we left.
How did you get to that agreement?
Just a lot of back and forth between the two lawyers. And I just wanted to be done. Like, I don't even think he completed his affidavit, his financial affidavit, but I didn't care because I did the bills for 20 years. So I knew what he was hiding and I knew what he was spending on, and I knew I wasn't going to get it back. So I was like, I don't care. So the lawyer didn't want to settle. She's like, no, you need this. And I was like, I don't, I just want to be done. So yeah, it was just, we finally just did it.
Yeah, but that's what you're saying is so critical for people to know. Here's the thing, especially like you didn't know a lot of people who had been through a divorce. You didn't know what to expect. You didn't know how this whole thing worked, right? So that's why I really wanted to have you on this podcast, because there are a lot of other people in the world who are in exactly the same situation as you were. And I don't want them to feel like, is this normal? Should I be doing this? What's going on? And to hear your story, that even though you wanted it to be amicable, even though you started by trying mediation, you didn't know what you were doing. He didn't know what he was doing. You ended up with 2 years of a mess that never went to trial. You settled beforehand, and you didn't get everything you probably should have, but you were like, you know what? I just want to be done. I'm good with that.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And that's the place so many people get to. And here's the message. That's okay. Is it right? No. Is it fair? No. But is it okay if you want to get on with your life when you know what you're walking away from and you make a decision? Absolutely. Because you in that moment made a decision that you wanted your life back, and it was okay to leave what you left. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Now, the other part of your story that I also happen to know was that your divorce didn't end there when the divorce was final. What happened?
Oh my goodness. So we decided on everything. We decided, that the split between what we would pay for medical bills, for dental bills, sports, school, everything was decided. Everything was in writing. And he just decided not to follow it. And I was like, you have to follow it, and nothing I said would get him to pay his portion of the bills. He would always say, I'm giving you child support that should pay for everything. Well, I was in St. Charles, that didn't even pay the mortgage.
Yeah.
So I'm like, no, you need to pay for your share of medical bills, dental bills, eyeglasses, everything. And I wasn't getting it. So here's another reason you need a coach. I waited like 2.5 years to go after him for it because I didn't know. I'm like, well, I'll wait until I get a really good chunk of money and then I'll hire another lawyer and then go to court for that. Well, no, the judge is like, why did you wait so long? I'm like, I don't know. I thought I should have a good sizable chunk of money before I come in. And she's like, no, you should have come in. I don't like you bringing me old things. I didn't know. So
yeah. And when you went in, did you hire a lawyer to represent you at that point, or did you do it yourself?
No, I hired a lawyer. I hired a different lawyer who was a little less expensive. I thought we had a little better rapport. He did fine, but again, like once I realized that went on for a long time too, like at least 9 months or so. And I went to a couple of the court whatever appearances, and when I found out I was actually paying like $375 for him to sit in court for 5 minutes, and then another $85 for him to send me a copy of the court order email, all that, like I didn't have enough money to spend again. Like I was out of my money. So I was like, no, after about 9 months, I'm like, I don't know why this is still dragging on, but I'm going to have to let you go. I'm like, I'm going to find a way to do this on my own. So it was all the back expenses, and my oldest was about to start college. I knew I was going to have a hard time getting college tuition out of him. So I wanted to be proactive and get ahead of it. So those were the two issues for that case. But I eventually let my lawyer go because I couldn't spend the money anymore. I learned how to do it all on my own. So it was crazy.
I know. And what you're saying is so important for people to hear, because if you do go back to court again, you have to pay the lawyer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's still, I don't know how much money was at stake that you were trying to get, but you have to offset that with what is it going to cost you to get it in order to decide, does this make sense or not?
Exactly. Yeah.
It always takes longer than you think.
Yep. Yeah. It's crazy. I just can't believe it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is crazy. And that wasn't the end of it, was it?
No, no. Well, that one ended bad. So I didn't even have that much. I mean, it was only, a couple thousand, 3,000, 4,000 that he owed, but it was really the college tuition that I was going after. So I had let go of my lawyer. And then by the time we got back in court, I think it was fall of the following year. So it was a little over a year. I went without a lawyer and he went with a lawyer. And I thought I'd be okay because I was so prepared. I had every document in triplicate. I had proof of everything he owed me. I thought it was going to be perfect and I would get the money I owed. And he had a lawyer. The judge was frustrated and he swore that he paid everything in cash. And the judge looked at me and said, "Can you prove he did not pay you in cash?" And I'm like, "Who can do that?" And he won. I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Yeah. So it's not always fair.
Oh my goodness.
Not always fair. Yeah.
That's crazy.
So yeah, that one ended bad, but at least it ended.
Oh my. And was that the end of it then?
No, we went back to court again because I kind of feel like how can I put this? I feel like since he won that one, he could get away with it again. So it was probably another year and a half or so, maybe a year, because I think I learned my lesson not to wait. I collected all the medical expenses again, and I filed my own petition for rule to show cause. All the notices, I filed all that on my own, sent it over to his lawyer, and we were back in court again for pretty much the same thing. But it didn't cost me, this time it was okay because it didn't cost me lawyer fees. So
that's crazy, and the reason that this story is so important for people to hear is that your divorce can keep, like, you were already divorced at that point, but it was back to court and back to court and back to court. And that kind of thing happens more than most people understand or realize, because I think it's hard to get good statistics on this because every court system is its own independent entity and there's no central repository of data that you can look at. But just anecdotally, from me being in court for decades, and sitting in divorce court, I can tell you that at least a third of the people in any courtroom on any given day were usually what we call post decree. Like they were already divorced and they were back fighting again and again and again. So that it goes to show you that, when people say, well, what's the value of going to mediation? That's part of the value of going to mediation, because statistically, if both of you have agreed on something, if you both participated and worked on making the agreement yourselves instead of having the lawyers do it, you're more likely to not end up in court again and again and again. Although life definitely happens.
exactly.
So if you had one piece of advice that you could give anyone who is facing a divorce, who is in the same situation as you, what would you tell them?
I would say it's important to build a team that you trust and get a coach. Seriously though, I think having a coach would have saved me so much time and so much money in the long run, because there are things no one tells you. There's things my lawyer didn't tell you, like find a way to communicate with your ex no matter what. Another big one I think is you're never going to be happy. The judge is there to make sure that no one's happy and that it's just fair. It's just fair. And I think it would have been helpful to know what my lawyer was looking for before I got to her. So if I had someone to help me prepare to meet with my lawyer in the first place, I think it would have went a lot smoother. And the other thing, it doesn't matter if you're right or not, it's what you can prove. Like I had a hard time, like I wish someone would have explained that to me. Just because I had just because I knew, I didn't always have, there's one time where I didn't have all the information I needed. This was there in the very beginning. And then he got that ruling. And it was because he could prove a different point than I could. I don't know if that makes sense. But after that, I learned to have all my ducks in a row and all my papers together and all my spreadsheets and everything in triplicate. But yeah, it doesn't matter if you're right. You have to be able to prove it.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. And, it sounds like I appreciate you sharing your story and sharing all the different decisions that you had to make along the way. Now I'm going to throw you a curveball. Can you tell me what's the best decision you've ever made?
I would have to say leaving the corporate life to retire and raise my kids. Definitely, I think that was the best one, the decision to be a stay-at-home mom, because we have such a great relationship now. And I don't think I would have had that if I was a working mom, because, I would come home and just me, I wouldn't have had the energy to spend with them that I was able to spend with them being a stay-at-home mom. So I think that was the best decision.
That's a beautiful decision. And it just goes to show that, like, sometimes the best decision isn't the one that makes the most money or that gives you the biggest position or prestige or whatever. It's the one that fills your cup, right?
Yep, for sure. Exactly.
Linda, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being brave and sharing your story. And for everyone listening or watching, like, I didn't know what her answers were. We did not set this up.
We didn't.
I'm not paying her to do this. So don't think that all of the things that she said that was influenced in any way. But I really appreciate it, because I think it's so important for people to hear the story of a real person who went through this and the struggles and how this really works. So thank you so much for coming on and for sharing your story. If people wanted to follow up with you, if they need an executive virtual assistant or want to follow up with you being an online business manager, where can they find you? Where's the best place for them to look?
My website is premierexecutiveadmin.com. And of course, I'll put it in the show notes. So you'll be able to find it there as well. But I think hopefully you remember when we first met, I was like, the first thing I said to you was, oh my God, I wish I knew you when I went through my divorce, because I could have used you. So, and I still mean that, because you do such great work and I love working with you. So thanks, Karen. I hope this helps someone.
Thank you, Linda. I really appreciate it. And for all of those who are listening or watching, if you liked what you heard, if you want more of this kind of content, give this a thumbs up, like, subscribe, and I'll talk to you again in the next episode.